So, Dennis, welcome to the Booze Boat podcast. How are you today?
I'm excited, my friend. I mean, this insight is going to be quite valuable. So thank you for having me. I'm truly blessed.
It's an honor for me. For any of my listeners who aren't necessarily familiar with your work and what you do, can you give us a brief introduction to, first of all, who you are, and you know, kind of a little mini biography almost?
Absolutely. Well, my online name goes by the Anxiety Guy. So anywhere you go, social or search engine wise, and you type the Anxiety Guy, you'll kind of recognize my own journey through an anxiety disorder, multiple anxiety disorders, um, kind of the emotional yo-yo of life, and coming out of that, um, 10 times the person I've really ever been in my life.
Amazing.
I started with anxiety very young, as many people do, but don't consciously really recognize. 3, 4, 5, 6 traumas were kind of the roots of what I was feeling presently, and then the anxiety kind of became an identity for me. I carried it no matter where I went. Um, I had to check in with it when I was meeting new people or doing anything new. And a lot of times I thought myself out of the things I truly wanted to do in my life because of anxiety. And then once I found sort of a formula, if you want to call it, um, that focuses on many different aspects of healing, I said, since I'm looking around the anxiety support groups and such, and I see so much pain and distress, why not do something with this? Why not spread some messages and see if people will actually listen to what I have to say? And that was years ago. And then here we are now, kind of with the podcast and the YouTubes and the programs and such. It's good.
I mean, I love it, and then that's how I came across you in the first place when I was struggling with anxiety. It's a good couple of 3 years ago, something like that now, and it was I was in a really, really bad way. I'd never experienced anything like this before, so to get it in my late 20s and have no idea what it was. First of all, I didn't know it was anxiety. I just knew something was terribly, terribly wrong, and then when I spoke to one of my lovely friends, Sarah, who's a therapist. A therapist isn't the right word to describe what she is. She's a psychologist. I beg your pardon. There's a difference. And she explained that that I was having anxiety. It was specifically health anxiety. And then so I started researching it, and then the healing process really started when I started to watch your videos and realize, and because it was the first time that someone had explained the symptoms that I was having, and that was literally such a big jump in a positive direction. So I was like, okay, this isn't just me.
I'm normal.
Yeah. And what I loved about what your content and what you did was you broke it down into like really, really minute feelings that I couldn't even express myself. What I was feeling, I couldn't express. Almost like out of body type scenarios, depersonalization, even the symptoms that you were explaining. I was like, I've got that.
That's me.
So huge. First of all, thank you so much, because it was my recovery from anxiety was in no small part to yourself, and also you're. I'm interested to find this because I'm wondering whether I'm doing this for the same reasons. Did you find that actually learning and researching into anxiety and into the processes of healing helped you on your own journey with anxiety? Was that a big part of it?
Absolutely. What was really interesting was the more I forced myself to heal, the more I looked consciously, looked for all the right answers, the farther the answers actually were from me. There was a moment there where I kind of I kind of just trusted that the answers would come to me. And whatever felt more natural is what I started to move towards. I remember there was a couple books, but one sticks out more than any other, and it was by someone who's not very well known, Aldo Pucci.
Aldo Pucci.
Feel the way you want to feel no matter what. And what that book did, along with others, of course, but what that book did was it gave me an understanding of the deeper explanations to what I was emotionally feeling and why I was thinking the way I was thinking. And so that kind of started the snowball of investigating this at the root causes, because for many years, I was thinking that my anxiety was a result of what was taking place in this present situation. It was the person I was talking to, it was the environment I was in, and so on. But the truth is that many of us are so afraid of digging deeper and doing something to resolve what took place long ago that they continue to think that overthinking can be a good distraction to looking deeper, and that's not good.
No.
And I stopped focusing on the symptoms. I started focusing on root causes, and let me tell you something. It was very messy, right? It was vulnerable. It was disastrous. I remember planning, I said this in other interviews, but planning my suicide. I had it all written out.
Yeah.
I was moments away from the bridge. The one thing that kept me going was give it another day. And the reason for living was my newborn child.
Yes.
So I believe if you have a big enough why, you can do pretty much anything you want to do. And I felt like there was some kind of force there in that day that said, this isn't the end, and this isn't all that life can be. There can be more to this. You can contribute more. So there was a feeling there that kind of led me towards helping more people.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Children can really save you in situations like that, can't they? It's my daughter is nearly 3, and she's in the forefront of my mind whenever I'm having any thoughts about surrounding alcohol and my lifestyle, and just just constantly thinking, just to be a better dad. And that was a big reason for my kind of my booze break, this kind of journey that I'm actually on at the moment.
It's a hell of a journey, honestly.
Yeah.
You should be tremendously proud of yourself and what you're
you.
doing here. And I'm hoping that a lot of people that are following my stuff will go in that direction, because it's so important and informative. So you should be tremendously proud, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's I don't know whether this is a really difficult question or not, because I can't answer it.
Sure.
But for people who have never consciously experienced heightened anxiety or consciously experienced anxiety, is there a way of putting it into words that you can kind of help people understand, what it is? Because it's serious to the people who are going through it, but for a lot of people who have never experienced it or never knowingly experienced it, it's almost like a myth.
Sure. What's interesting, well, to describe anxiety, of course, there's many different types of anxieties out there, but I tend to see anxiety as a bit of a spider web effect, where something can potentially start very small. Um, a feeling, a fear, a little sensitivity around a person or a situation or whatever, or even a symptom of anxiety. And it starts small and we don't pay it too much attention. And it just kind of sticks around. And what happens with anxiety is we become conscious of things quite quickly if we don't properly deal with them. And what it really feels like is this immense, ongoing, seemingly never ending, deep sensitivity towards everything in life.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is many times the combination, if not all the time, the combination of the external threats, but the internal threats as well.
Yes.
We have the potential with anxiety to look at something as simple as a cup of water and to think that we may choke because we're about to drink that glass of water. So
Yes.
therefore, we don't drink it. And then what happens with anxiety is the instincts basically run every single day.
Okay.
It's very instinctual. They wake up in the morning, they feel something, and they're automatically on high alert. It's like the fight or flight or freeze response. And you go about your day looking for the threat in everything and never ever being present. Right? So you're constantly living in the future, looking to prepare yourself for future threats based on experiences from your past.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is basically a circle, a cycle that really eats up a tremendous amount of creativity, tremendous amount of time, and a tremendous amount of energy, where people are constantly looking to prepare themselves from the next threat, and thinking that this is in fact, at an unconscious and conscious level, this is the way life should be lived because it promotes a sense of safety.
Yes.
Okay. Now, give somebody the option to look at life differently and do things differently, and they'll begin feeling unsafe, even if it's better for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's the big problem, because now they're basically moving through life with a corrupted intellect, a mind that says this means this and this means that, and so on. It's corrupted, it's conditioned, it's programmed. And let me tell you something else as well. Um, I believe that society today, it's very hard not to be anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Put aside the COVID, put aside what's been taking place lately. Before all that, it's very hard because you're constantly looking to climb the corporate ladder, and you're looking to please others, and you're looking to wear the mask all day long, and you're looking to connect with others many times in an artificial way. How can you not be anxious?
Absolutely.
Right? So it takes a tremendous amount of consciousness, a tremendous amount of awareness to question what you've believed is true about yourself in reality in order to heal anxiety.
It's a really good explanation, and like you said, there's so many factors that kind of go in to that, and you like you say, I mean, things like our phones, our social media, health, um, all of
Bingo.
these different things can kind of, and even like social media, especially for health anxiety. So for like I was or am, as soon as I start talking about a symptom, I start getting ads for those symptoms. I start getting my phone's listening to me. It's going, by the way, I reckon you've got lung cancer, or maybe you should go and check this out. You can send us in
That's
a
right.
sample. And I'm like, shit.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
know.
yeah,
They know that
yeah.
I've got.
Exactly. Whatever you search is gonna follow you no matter where you go these days.
So scary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But moving on from continuing on with anxiety and explanations. Can you give a good explanation as to what a panic attack is? Because again, it's something that I've experienced personally, but I really, really struggle to put it into words of what that is, so that for listeners who ever experienced that, they'll know. They'll know.
Yeah. I'll tell you, a full blown panic attack is the closest thing to the experience of dying that I've ever felt in my life. I mean, I don't know anything that would come close to thinking that you're on the edge, about to jump over, and life's about to end.
Mm-hmm.
A panic attack is known to be quite an unconscious effect, where you're going about your day, and this system within you that is looking to connect and make associations with what's going on in the outside world is making those connections, and over a short period of time, what happens is those connections lead to the body mobilizing itself
Okay.
to be able to prepare for something that's either happening right now or in the future. Can a panic attack be caused simply through your imagination? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Many times it is, because there really is not a whole lot of things in the external world that justifies the idea of fully protecting yourself from a potential disaster.
Sure.
So the imagination plays a huge part, but a panic attack um, it comes with a massive opportunity to learn about the idea that it's not really you consciously that's making the decisions
Mm-hmm.
on how to respond to life, but there's a deeper part of you that is the majority of you that's making those decisions for you in order for you to move swiftly through life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but with panic attacks, they're very much confusing. They're very much out of the blue. Um, they can cripple a person's life in every aspect of their life. It doesn't matter if it's career, relationships, whatever it is. And what happens with panic attacks is you begin questioning your own capabilities, therefore your self-worth deteriorates.
Yes.
And then you begin questioning whether or not you can even keep a relationship together, or embrace your creative side. I mean, life becomes so small um, and limited when you're experiencing panic attacks. And the biggest problem, which many of your listeners probably know, is that we do whatever it takes to end the possibility of an attack, even move towards alcohol or other ways,
Sure.
just to create some kind of temporary relief from what we're feeling.
Absolutely. And this idea of, and not just with panic attacks, but just self-medicating, it's almost like a vicious cycle of, if you have anxiety, and most people, most people have drank, do drink, infrequently, frequently, whatever. Most of the population, will drink, not necessarily in concerning amounts, but we all know what alcohol does to us. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
suffering from anxiety, it's so tempting. And I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I was a big drinker, even when I was suffering with anxiety. And one of the things that I used to struggle with was sleep. I couldn't get to sleep because these horrible, horrible thoughts were in my head, and they would run through. And of course, everything, when you're tired and when you're in bed and you've got no other stimulus, and you can just close your eyes and everything gets a million times worse, and it's
Right.
almost ridiculous when you look back.
Ridiculous. It's totally opposite.
Yeah.
Right? I
But
mean, my eyes are closed.
yeah, it's
Right.
just like I say, it's your imagination. Your imagination goes wild, and but there's no one there to talk you out of it. So then you're like, well, I need to get drunk to sleep, to go to
Mm-hmm.
sleep, to stay asleep.
Yeah.
But of course, alcohol wrecks your sleep. You don't have a full sleep with alcohol. It's just a sedative. It's not a relaxant. So it's tempting. It's so tempting, and
Very tempting. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
tough. It's one of the first things when I was suffering with anxiety. It was one of the first things that my lovely friend Sarah told me to stop, was drinking alcohol. So it's going to make things 10 times worse, because it's going to heighten your anxiety. Uh, and I was also suffering with depression. I think the two quite often go hand in hand.
Totally.
So yeah, but both of those both of those things,
Totally.
were just like counterproductive essentially.
It's
But
good advice. It's good advice.
going on the topic of alcohol. Um, what's your relationship with alcohol? Did you have one previously? Do you have one now? Can you talk us through that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, my relationship with alcohol. Well, I went through my late teens and early 20s experimenting. Wow, this is cool. This makes me feel free. It makes me feel like I can be my genuine self, and rather than be my artificial self.
Sure.
So that carried on for pretty much a decade, and then stopping, but then restarting drinking, but mainly on the weekends. And I really looked forward to the weekend, because um, it gave me a sense of being in touch with reality again and life again. Alcohol for me um, was good, but also very bad in the sense that it was good in the moment, but the next morning and the following days were very, very anxious days and
Hmm.
very panicky days, very sensitized days. So there was a trade-off. You either drink and you feel good temporarily, and you feel like you're not caught up in your symptoms, you're not experiencing them, your thoughts are clear, you can be present, you can be engaged with people. Great. This is the cure I've been looking for.
Hmm.
But then with every uh, thing that we believe is a cure these days, many times there are also a lot of side effects. So the side effects for me was, it took about 5, maybe 6, 7 days sometimes to get over
Yeah.
that. The other really interesting thing about alcohol was, um, over time, when my body began getting used to the amount of alcohol I was drinking that was causing me to feel relaxed,
Hmm.
um, I started to create these associations in my head. And the first thing that happened was when I looked at just a glass of wine, or I looked at a beer or whatever it is, um, and I took a sip, just one sip or maybe two sips or whatever. It was almost like that would trigger and activate some kind of panicky response for the next day right away.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, okay, well, if you're going to drink, no matter how much you drink, the next couple days are going to be a pain in the butt
Hmm.
for sure. We're going to make it harder for you. That was kind of the feeling that my body gave me. Um, Alcohol postpones anxiety temporarily, and then it multiplies it,
And it's such a
basically.
it's such a bad trade of time, isn't it? Because, like you said, if you're suffering for 5 days, 4 days, three
Yeah,
days,
on average.
but
Yeah.
you're trading, let's say, 5 hours, 6 hours of um, relaxation in inverted commas, because and it's like I say, it's more of a sedative, numbing the mind, the perception of enjoyment for those 6 hours, but you pay for it for 5 days. It's such a bad trade,
Yeah, absolutely.
you
The
know.
problem that it also after that is you kind of you feel like you've lost uh, inner power to be able to deal with the thing that you need to deal with. It
Hmm.
no longer is in your hands. It's in the hands of everything that's on the outside. So now you're looking for the exact person, the exact technique, the exact amount of alcohol, the exact amount of benzodiazepines, everything on the outside, which eventually lowers your self-worth and your self-concept. And next thing you know, you're so jumbled up that you don't know where to turn anymore
Hmm.
to heal anxiety. Um, so it truly is a really devastating, for me. It was some devastating days, months, years, continuous cycle. And um and I feel for people that are going through that right now. But the message would be, um, to really understand that beyond the alcohol or beyond the things that you're relying on the outside lie a tremendous amount of healing potential within you, if you could only take the time to look deeper into what you're doing in terms of thinking, imagining, actions that's causing you to be anxious in the first place. The alcohol is there to run away or to avoid something. So if there's no reason to avoid or run away from everything, you can go ahead and enjoy your glass of wine in the present moment rather than use it for some kind of an end result that you're looking for.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And time's the key with that as well, isn't it? Because like you said, that the short-term fix is drinking. You know, if you but again fix in inverted commas, because it doesn't fix anything. But you know, if you're struggling with anxiety, even if it's just mild social anxiety, you know, going to a bar, meeting with clients, things like that, you know, not necessarily just sitting at home drinking. You know, it's that short-term fix with those long-term like hangxiety, that hangover anxiety consequences.
Let me fill you in on this. What was really interesting towards the awakening, you want to call it, or the deeper insights I was having after those chapters in my life, was I started to go to the bar and order tea and order water instead. Tremendous amount of vulnerability, tremendous amount of sensitivity. The beer was the means to an end that would get me to connect with people in what I felt was a more natural way. And now all of a sudden, I'm the one that's being left out and everybody else is drinking. And now I have to test myself and prove to myself that this vulnerable place that I'm in can in fact be accepted by other people, and I can reconnect with people even in this sensitized state that I'm in. So what started to happen was really interesting. I tested myself in these different ways. Go to the bar, drink the water, have the tea, whatever. Don't look to avoid the judgments of others, but go ahead and just simply accept them for what they are.
Sure.
Judgments. And what started to happen was I began feeling more and more immune to what people thought about me. And when that started to happen, the right people came into my life at the right time, the right information. Just things started to just flow. So you could see how I wasn't looking to kind of get to a place where full acceptance by others, status quo stuff, constant distraction. I wasn't living in that world anymore, but I was living in a more vulnerable place, and that was very testing. A lot of people, when they're in that testing place, revert right back to what they've done before. But stay in that vulnerable place for a longer period of time. Test yourself. And what you're going to find is some insights that you would never have gained if you hadn't had tested yourself. And those insights are the very things that will lead to your healing. It's not the doing. It's not the techniques. It's not any of those things. It's the epiphanies that you get when you've challenged yourself and you've come out of that challenge. You get that light bulb moment. And in that moment, you're going, wow, damn, those beliefs that have been running my entire life, they've been completely false. In fact, they weren't even mine. They were mom's, they were dad's, they were my friends. And for once in my life, I get to create my own beliefs about myself in the world for once. And there you go, bingo, you're on the healing journey.
I think anxiety, I think identity becomes a huge part of this process of, alcohol use. And I've touched on it on a previous episode. And I caught something that you said there that, you can embrace these changes in who you are and how you identify and your social situations and stuff. And somehow you'll kind of, I can't think of a better way of describing it than give off an energy that other like-minded people are going to be drawn to. And they're the people that all of a sudden you know, I think a lot of people are concerned that once they stop drinking, if they say, right, I'm going to stop drinking for X amount of time or forever, all of my social circle now aren't going to accept me, and I'm going to be boring. I'm not going to have any friends and stuff. And first of all, that potentially might not be the case. If there are people that won't accept you for not drinking, which is ridiculous. You don't necessarily need them in your life at that time. But what you will find is you'll start to gravitate, and people will gravitate towards you who are on a similar journey. Maybe it's not, maybe it's not because you're alcohol free, but because all of a sudden you've embraced your own identity, or this new identity, and realized that actually I am an introvert, and I'm not good in huge groups, and that's totally okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is what I found. I thought I was an extrovert, and I did a bit of a test, and I was a classic introvert that could just switch it on. And it wasn't necessarily about alcohol, but it was a big part of it. But that fear, that desperate desire to be accepted, I just don't give a shit anymore, Right. There's a certain amount of people that I really care about their opinion, but for everybody else, take it or leave it.
Place.
Yeah, it's great. Oof. It's great. It's nice. It's obviously it's nice to be liked. I like it. I don't want anyone to hate me, but yeah, it's I'm less worried about other people's opinions. I don't base my happiness based on that.
Right.
But yeah,
I just want to add this because it just kind of comes to my mind really quickly, because I'm thinking about your listeners, your followers. What tends to happen, and as I look back on the drinking portion of my whole journey, was that we're constantly fixated on what we're going to be gaining from the drinking, but we're never really associating enough pain to the act, enough for us to see beyond it. Yes. So that we can take power back. One of the things we have to really be aware of is this idea of pain and pleasure. If I attach enough pleasure to continuing the drinking habit, then I'm going to continue doing it. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I may want to stop doing it, but I've still associated a tremendous amount of pleasure to it, which is going to eventually draw me back in. But if I can connect enough pain to it, and one of the things that I do with people to overcome this, and it's very, very powerful, and people can use this, is using your imagination to become disgusted by the drink itself. So I would use all their senses with their imagination and go, okay, what do you see? I mean, if that drink was absolutely disgusting, what do you see? Well, I see bubbles, moldy bubbles coming out of the drink that I just ordered at the pub I go to every single day. Okay. What do you hear from those bubbles? I hear that it bubbling up, and it's kind of got a name to it, saying, whatever it is. But what does it smell like? Okay, well, it smells absolutely disgusting. It smells gross. Would you ever put this in your mouth? No, I've never put. So we can utilize the imagination in this way in order for us to create more pain, not just logically and rationally pain, but imaginatively, emotionally creating pain, to the point where I ask people, well, are you going to go back to that pub? I have no reason to go back to that pub. Are you going to have that drink? I have no reason to have that drink. I've already somehow in my mind created an association that says, ooh, this is doing a lot more harm to me than I believe is doing good. That's Absolutely. The turning point. It really is.
And I think if you do that often enough, that that could be conditioned into your subconscious in some respect, can't it? And that's something that I've kind of gone through. I'm seeing this a lot. A lot of the stuff that I dealt with anxiety, I can put straight onto my issues with alcohol, and the techniques that I've used previously to kind of get through a really difficult part of my life with regards to anxiety. I'm thinking I'm using similar techniques. I'm using similar mindsets, and so there's a lot of connection there, and also just this using this imagination, actually properly researching, and there's some amazing books which I do link to on my website and in show notes. Sure. Of the actual effects of alcohol, the real effects, and there's a lot of questions that you can kind of ask yourself, and it's the simple things of if you gave yourself a pros and cons for alcohol, there wouldn't be a lot of pros and there'd be a shitload of cons, and even the pros a lot of the time aren't real. I think people think that they think because it's ingrained in society and it's ingrained in their movements and
Sure.
things like that alcohol gives you pleasure, But
Sure.
I don't remember the last time that I drank and I thought, oh, this is so pleasurable. I'm
Mm.
having a great time. What it did give me is relief. But a lot of the time that was relief from the fact that I hadn't drank for the whole day. And I
Right.
was suffering, you know, there was
Got too
a
deeper
low level
insight.
of suffering essentially.
Mhm.
And the alcohol, it's a bit like hair of the dog, you know, where you have that drink the next day that's early
Yep.
because you've got a hangover. It's like a mild version of that, but you're having it in the evening because you've, especially when you get to the point, it's different for people who only drink on occasion, but for people like
Sure.
myself who was drinking every day,
Mhm.
medium to heavy amounts of alcohol,
Sure.
you're living in a constant state of, um, it's not recovery, is it? What's when when you stop something, you go cold turkey, you get symptoms. I've completely forgotten the name of that. What is it?
All good. I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
withdrawal. That's it.
Sure.
You're in a constant state of mild withdrawal.
Sure.
And once you kind of look into the negative effects of alcohol, it makes it a lot easier for your imagination to think of that glass
Exactly.
of beer to
Pain
be
and pleasure.
disgusting.
You
Yeah.
got it. You got it. I mean, it's not until we have an emotional shift. You know, a lot of people are looking for the mental shift.
Hmm.
If I think about it differently, then I'll probably be able to give it up. Most of the time, it doesn't work. You got to create emotion inside someone, because that is the language of the subconscious. The subconscious doesn't shift its pairings between things, associations, until it feels an emotional shift towards it. Right. I
Yes.
mean, if I look at alcohol now, we'll probably go into that later on, but if I look at it now, um, my body basically rejects it completely at this point. It just
Hmm.
doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
No.
Um, so those associations are pretty ingrained there because I've been doing the tools and I've been reminding myself and I've attached enough pain to it. And I've done it over time to the point where the system goes, okay, well, we don't need this in our lives.
No. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a break from alcohol. And this isn't just a month. This is like an extended um, period of time. You know, not just a month. I don't think you
Mm,
can see some benefits from not drinking for a month because I've seen them. But I think to really, really change your mindset and come back with a completely fresh, new body, mindset, habit cycle, everything, and then make a conscious decision to sort of think about alcohol and think, okay, I'm now going to question, am I ready to pick up an alcoholic drink again? And I think,
mm.
what am I going to gain from it? You know,
Ooh,
what
that
do I
moment.
get? So that's what I want to get to, is that stage.
Sure.
And this is the experiment. This is the journey that I'm taking the Booze Break kind of listeners on. Um,
Yes.
so I came across an amazing article on your blog, which is from years ago. So I'll completely forgive you if you don't remember half of the stuff that was on there. But it
Hmm.
talks about the anxiety and the hangover cycle. And I really gelled, with that.
Sure.
Can you talk us through, that process of what happens when drink, let's say drink excessively or
Hmm.
on a regular basis and stuff? What's going on
Sure.
in your mind and in your body?
Yeah, it's a really interesting process. People feel anxious and drink alcohol to relax,
Hmm.
right? In the anxiety world, it's like it gives me the opportunity to relax. Um, the response is a sense of calmness to the system. Our senses seem to be working in order in that moment. Because this is a perspective from someone suffering from anxiety, because the biggest symptom that comes with anxiety is dizziness and depersonalization. You'll pretty much hear it in the majority of people out there, which gets them to a place where they're not really fully presently experiencing their sensation, their senses. They'll see things, but they won't really recognize what they're seeing. They'll
Hmm.
hear things, but they can't really make it out. They'll feel things, they don't even know if they're touching them. Forget about taste and smell. It pretty much doesn't exist in a severe anxiety disorder sufferer's life. They never smell what they're drinking or eating or taste their food. They're in too much of a rush. So alcohol gives us that relaxed feeling, that effect that says, ooh, we are calm in this moment. There is no threat, and therefore we can engage with our senses better. But after the initial stages of relaxation, what the body does is it metabolizes alcohol and eliminates it. And then in the phases after that, what happens is the original effect that the alcohol was giving us, very similar, in fact, to taking benzodiazepines for many people, starts to wear down. So when this starts to wear down, we start to take more, we start to drink more in the hopes of getting back to that original place. So now we're caught in a habit that is literally poisoning us. And we are hoping and trusting that if we continue to consume more amounts of alcohol or anything else for that matter, we'll get back to that original freeing place that we were in originally.
Yes.
The problem with that whole cycle is that people begin to have, and like I mentioned earlier, kind of an over-reliance on everything outside, and they never really understand how the body can in fact heal itself, its organ systems, and so on, everything internally, that it can actually heal itself. It never gets to the point mentally where they understand that they can heal themselves or be able to activate those healing mechanisms within them, because at that point they're just so caught up in looking to feel better now.
Yes.
And the idea of constantly looking to feel better now seems to never work out the way we want it to, because in order to heal anxiety or heal your emotional distress and such, there's got to be some kind of a long-term focus to it. When that long-term focus is there, then the pressure of having to feel better now is no longer there. Therefore, we can begin to interpret the idea of drinking alcohol or whatever it may be differently. Because I don't need that good feeling now. It can happen in a month from now, a week from now, whatever it is. And you start to draw power back to you. So the hangover effect to this is very much mentally and emotionally connected, because like I mentioned before, I would have a similar hangover to drinking just a few sips of alcohol compared to me kind of having 5 or 6 beverages.
Yes.
And that made me very confused. What's going on here? So it's more so has to do with the connections we make between things. If I do this, it'll lead to that. If I do this much of it, it'll lead to that much of it, so on. So moving forward to someone who's currently in this place, it's their ability to obviously to slow down the amounts that they're drinking, to tap back into their creative sides again, because when you feel fulfilled in your own life and you feel like it's coming from the inside out, then there really is nothing you attach yourself to on the outside that can get even close to the amount of joy and pleasure that you experience from the inside. So, tapping back into our creative sides is very, very important. But as far going back to the cycle of panic and the hangover, it really is something that unless you've truly experienced it, you won't fully understand it. You can't understand it. It really is self-sabotage at the highest order.
And like you say, it is a cycle. And, you know, the word is really poignant because it's self-perpetuating. You know, let's say, for instance, you drink to relieve depression, anxiety. But you might even experience some lapse, you know, in that when when you're you know, in the moment, and then the following day, your anxiety and depression's got worse. Oh crap, I need to drink. And that kind of constant flow. And even like you say, that the effects are quite long term. So you can, even if you're not a daily drinker, if you drink once or twice a week or something like that, you can still be feeling these effects 4-5 days later. You know, you haven't touched a drop of alcohol for 4 or 5 days, and there's got to be other factors. Sleep is a huge factor. You know, with you know, alcohol use, even on a really small level. And there's a lot of data on this, that, you know, just one beer, one glass of wine, these are kind of people who, you know, on the outside, you think that these guys haven't got an issue, that they're still running at 100% peak performance. You're not, because the knock-on effects of sleep and all of these different things are you know, are still experienced from just that one glass. And sleep for me was the biggest part of alcohol. Sleep was the biggest part of anxiety recovery, because if I didn't get enough sleep, my anxiety was sky high the next day. You know,
that's another big part of it all. Yes. You'll pretty much do whatever it takes to get that sleep, and you can't blame people for doing some of that stuff.
Absolutely not. I did.
Absolutely debilitating. Yeah.
It's like this is why anxiety is such a difficult subject, because it's so difficult and long term to come out of. But one of the things that I found was, the long term doesn't need to be necessarily be a bad thing. But I think if you're an anxiety sufferer, of course you want to get out of it as quickly as physically possible. And what I found was, there wasn't a quick fix. It was long term, but I did see progression straight away. And that was the thing that I really noticed, was that, yes, that, you know, I put in some practices, I put in some mindful thinking, I changed my habits, changed my perception, tried to use some of the techniques that I learned from yourself and from other sources, and notice a difference straight away. It's not gone, but it's progress, and that was good enough for me. And I think that's a big thing, that there's the issue with alcohol, is it is a quick fix, but that's not how you get rid of anxiety, as far as I'm concerned. Not that not from my experience anyway.
Well said. Exactly.
So for the, I know that you hate, and I know that there isn't a tip for, you know, relieving or substituting alcohol as a medication, a self-medication, a technique for relieving anxiety. But are there strategies, are there thoughts or steps that people can take to begin to cease the use of alcohol as a self-medicating anxiety relief?
Right. We mentioned earlier, one of the things that people have to start doing is bringing to their conscious attention the things they need to in order to start the healing process. First things first is, before you do anything, any kind of change, behavioral change, you want to make sure that you set yourself up for success. And the way you do that, because this is twofold, it's the skill sets and the mindsets. You have to have the mindsets in order for the skill sets to work and for you to be doing them long term. So you would make a list, like we mentioned, of pain and pleasure to bring to your attention what this habit is really doing to you. And then to set yourself up, you want to make sure that you understand that you have two choices. One, you can either continue with the habit that you currently have, and be 90, 80, 100 years of age, look back and have a tremendous amount of regret to the amount of time you spent, the effort you put in, and so on to hide what you need to look directly at. Or you have the option of going through the temporary discomfort that you need to in order for you to see through the very thing you thought you needed originally. Okay, so setting yourself up comes first. We need to do a little bit of peeling the onion work. Okay, and another big question would be, well, deep down, which emotion am I in fact suppressing, or which label am I suppressing, which is causing me to engage in this habit of drinking? Well, a lot of people will say, when I was young, I was told I was, very internal. I was very antisocial. Okay, well, the root cause of why you're drinking may be so that you can temporarily get away and to convince people that you're not antisocial, because that's what you tried to do when you were younger for years, and it didn't work. Okay, in the end, you were still labeled that by other people, therefore it became your own label, your identity. So we drink for specific purposes, for reasons that may be in our awareness or outside of our awareness. And we need to find the reason for why we do it first and foremost. Because the vast majority of the time, people aren't looking to move towards something. They're looking to move away from something else.
That makes sense.
Okay. So when we realize this, we can begin. And many times people will say, well, even if I do find the root causes of why I drink, and I engage in it and I fix it, and I'll probably still want to drink. The truth is that you won't. You won't, because life will have meaning. Life will have purpose. Okay. We overdrink because we're also lacking a sense of purpose in our lives.
Sure.
Many people don't really have a specific thing to live for and get excited for when they wake up in the morning. And it's all a cover up in the end. It's all a bandaid. So you have to figure out what you're looking to bandage up. So the mindset starts first. Pain and pleasure, make the list. Find your why, the biggest reason for why you need to do this. Find out what you're running away from. Okay, you're not moving towards anything. You're running away from something.
Sure.
Engage, like I mentioned. Don't wait for the right time. Don't wait for the right person. Don't wait for the right book. Don't wait for the right X. Engage in some kind of creative act that you've put on the shelf because you've talked yourself out of it being the right time for you to engage with it. People are very artistic. Okay. There's a lot of poets out there. There's a lot of artists out there. There's a lot of creative people out there. There's a lot of people out there with fantastic ideas to better humanity. You need to engage in creative acts in order for you to feel like you've got a purpose in your life. Therefore, you can stop looking for quick fixes and move into a place where you're no longer an emotional yo-yo.
Sure.
Because drinking, for me at least, fed me with the feeling that I thought I had to live with. I needed, because people told me, oh, you're not fun. You need to be more excited. You need to smile more. Okay, well, drinking can give you that, so why not? So this emotional yo-yo means I'm either excitable or I'm down in the dumps, right?
Yes.
It's one or the other. But people don't realize that this middle ground, hovering in this middle ground, just a little bit here and a little bit there, is our natural, pleasant, and neutral place to be.
Neutral's a great place to be, for sure.
Neutral's a great place to be. People don't realize there is a neutral out there, because the moment they're alone by themselves, or the moment they're, the room is dark, or the moment they're somewhere uncomfortable, there's an association there, there's a threat there, there's a label there. So those creative acts are going to be very, very important on this journey. Finding, not looking for, but running into your purpose through certain self-care measures is important. And like I mentioned in my latest book, reframing is very, very important. You can't move forward in your life until you've made peace with your past. That means people, experiences, situations. So emotional reframing, keyword emotional, reframing certain aspects of your past is going to be essential towards you seeing deeper and through the drinking habit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a great time to actually mention your book. So well done, perfectly timed, because I'm excited to hear more about it. I read up a little on it beforehand, but I'm excited to inform the listeners. And it's got an amazing title. It's my kind of title: "Fuck Coping, Start Living." That's anyone that knows me knows I've got a foul mouth, and it's really hard to switch it off. So it's nice to be able to actually have an excuse to swear on my own podcast, which I do anyway.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book? How did it come about? How did it come about? Who's it for? Anything?
I had a first book, actually. In the first book, it was very personal. It was kind of like, here's who I am, here's what I went through, here's who you can choose to gain some insight from. The second book is really a compilation of the last 10 years. It takes very important teachings from the trauma world. It takes some things from the CBT world. It takes some things from the hypnosis world and NLP. So it really is a compilation of these different methodologies that have been proven to work for people suffering from anxiety disorders. But a lot of the book as well is very much kind of left field, where it's stuff that you really haven't noticed or heard of before. And it does come from a very intuitive place of mind. And it is very real. People will be able to relate to a lot of the things I'm saying in that book. And also, it will create the kind of insight and epiphanies that they need in order to question who they've become. It's very much based on identity work. It's very much based on core belief work and purpose work, which are the three parts that a person needs to focus on in order to bring about healing. It doesn't focus so much on situational, environmental. It doesn't focus so much on symptoms. So it goes as deep as I possibly can go, and gives you practical ways to begin the healing process. But at the same time, it gives you the understanding of how you got here, truly how you got here, the understanding of what it's going to take to get to that place you want to get to. And I think it's going to do a lot of good for people. It really is.
It sounds amazing. And it sounds so relevant to the stuff that I research and I talk about, specifically about how our relationship with alcohol, identity is something I geek out about so much. And I go into a little bit of detail on it on episode 3 of the Booze Break podcast. And by far that was the most difficult episode to do, just from the fact that I could have spent so long going on and researching, and it's the one I've spent the most amount of time on, because it's something that I think we can all relate to, and we can all work towards. And actually, when you really start to look at your identity, especially, it can change everything, and it is a malleable force, and you go through life for the most part not even thinking about it. It's just like, well, someone asks you, who are you? You sort of, you can name a few things, photographer, father, husband, drinker, and all these kinds of things, and you can kind of go, actually, I'm just going to take that little bit that's drinker, I'm just going to throw that aside for at least for a little bit, and I'm going to put in something else. Outdoorsman, nudist, whoever, whatever you want to do. And it could be so powerful, because then you can start to live, and so I'm really excited. I think my listeners will get a lot from your book, Foot Coping, Start Healing. It's on Amazon. Am I right in saying that?
Yes. The audiobook will come out at the end of July for anyone interested, but the physical book and the digital is on Amazon.
I'm excited for the audiobook. For sure. I think it's almost like it's the next question always when someone's got a book, isn't it? It's like, when's the audiobook? Is it yourself narrating it as well?
No, I have somebody else, another professional, doing it. I think it's a long book. So I've got some audiobooks there on YouTube that are a little bit shorter, but I chose, I don't know, I just kind of went with my gut and said, this guy's really good. So he's going to do a great job, I think.
You've got a very relaxing voice, and that would be a concern for me if I really want to take in.
I put you to sleep.
Yeah, well, there's always this thing of not necessarily put me to sleep, but certainly take me into a place that's not in a place of study. It's a place of subconscious, kind of ingestion of information. But this is the thing I quite like about books, and this is the thing that I've come across from stopping drinking, is I read again, and I can read quite well. And that's brand new for me. I've read books in the past, the classic holiday reader. I still haven't finished the Harry Potter series or anything like that. But I'm really geeking out about self-help, especially if it's around alcohol. But what I love about books more so is if I can go back super quick. I can go back. That last paragraph again was fantastic. Let me read that. Let me make a note on that. Sure. All of these kinds of things. And I love audiobooks because I can do them while I'm editing, at work. But I kind of save that for fictional these days, because I don't need to study a fictional book. But when it comes to self-help,
podcasts are great for,
Yes.
You get involved in a good podcast. You can listen to it offline, I believe, too. So if you can connect with these podcasts, that's also fantastic. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a podcast geek, for sure. So yeah, I'm really excited about the book. It's on my list. Although I am enjoying reading, I'm still slow compared to most people. I think my mum can read a book in a day, which blows my mind.
Wow. I want to know what her secrets are.
I'm not sure she's taking in any of that information, though. I think she's just looking at the words.
She's just skimming it.
But no, it takes me a lot longer. I'm quite glad that a lot of the books that are around, especially things like self-help, health, things like that, they're quite palatable sizes as well. They're readable. It's not a novel, because sometimes you get a book that's like, 10 inches thick, you think, shit, I'm never going to get through that, and just puts you off straight away for a lot of books. But I'd like to get to that point. I'd like to get to the point where I can, beast a novel in a week or something like that. So where can people find you in the world, social, wherever?
Sure. theanxietyguy.com is my main website. You can actually listen to all the recent podcasts there. Apple Podcasts, look up The Anxiety Guy. You can go on YouTube, same thing. And it's all kind of a mixed bag of knowledge there. And once, actually, as well, if there's anybody out there that's specifically health anxiety concerned, there's also a health anxiety podcast that you can find that I'm doing monthly on Apple as well. So 2 podcasts there.
What's the health anxiety podcast called? Because that's brand new information to me.
A lot of people don't know it. Health Anxiety Podcast Show. It's just monthly, and it's very specific to health anxiety sufferers. Again, we focus on root causes a lot, and we dive into issues that not only are talked about, but they're all actually solved through the podcast. So yeah, I mean, those are a couple ways to get a hold of me. If you have any questions, I pretty much answer the vast majority of questions I get on Instagram.
Okay.
Like if they comment there, I do a lot of lives there. So whatever platform you're on, just look up The Anxiety Guy or go to www.theanxietyguy.com and you'll connect with me.
That's amazing, because you've got a lot of followers and a lot of likes and a lot of, a lot of great content out there that is commentable and likable and shareable. And even now, and back when I first got in contact with yourself, within a day I had a message back, and I wasn't expecting it at all. And it's so lovely. I'm sure at some stage it just becomes impossible. But it's really nice that you can do it currently. But yeah, I highly recommend any of my listeners, whether you're going on a booze break or not, definitely go and check out The Anxiety Guy. It's so valuable. A lot of the information is transferable as far as I'm concerned, because I've used it during both my anxiety and my booze break. And it's really amazing content. And it also, it's so holistic, because I've found some great information on just nutrition and stuff that I didn't know, and certain types of food that can heighten anxiety. And it all, once you start to implement these things into your life, it all starts to make a difference. And they're so easy to do. There's not, changing food isn't like doing homework. It's all things. Yeah, absolutely. It's all stuff that you can kind of implement into your life relatively simply, and it's fun.
Right.
It was fun for me anyway.
Right.
Dennis, it's been an amazing experience having you on the show. I've been fanboying the whole way through.
No need.
if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's either currently on a booze break or about to embark on a booze break, whether that be related to anxiety or not, have you got any piece of advice, anything from your own experiences that you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. In order to fully understand this important piece of advice, I think what's important to understand is when we look at boozing, drinking, it does provide us with feelings and a sense of identity, a sense of connection, a sense of love from others and love towards ourselves. All these things that are all grouped together in the act of drinking. The most important piece of advice I would give is to implement this law related to the law of substitution, where you would substitute one habit for another habit that gives you the exact same things the old unproductive habit was giving you. Okay. So now what happens is the more you engage in this habit that provides you with the same feelings, a sense of everything else, you're going to want to go back to the old habit less and less over time.
That makes sense.
So the law of substitution is one of the things that I've implemented in my own life, and I've found a very rapid transition. In fact, take a smoker, for example. Smoker. What does it do for you? Ask that person, what does it do for you? Well, it makes me feel cool. It makes me feel relaxed, and so on. Okay, well, is there anything else that you can engage in that still makes you feel cool and still makes you feel relaxed? Watch what happens when that person spends a couple of weeks doing the new act or the new behavior. Watch what happens, how they start to interpret the old smoking or drinking habit. They won't want to go back to it. So this takes a little bit of digging to see the connection in terms of what it gives you, and then connect that to a new activity altogether, and then allow the process to be very natural, not forced. Oh, I don't feel the way I want to feel yet. That's okay. because you're not supposed to judge your healing from day to day and moment to moment. This is a journey. This is an awakening. You're going places you never thought you'd go. You're going to meet people you never thought you'd meet. So the law of substitution is something that I would highly, highly look into, recommend. If you go on YouTube and just put up law of substitution, I believe, or universal laws, the anxiety guy, I go into much more detail into these laws. But that's what I would advise.
That's amazing advice, and it gels quite nicely with something you mentioned earlier about being creative. And from a photographer's point of view, one of the things that's very therapeutic for me, but also is a great substitute for drinking, is going out of an evening and swapping the time drinking. And I don't do this every single day, but I did do it for a period of time. And taking your camera and set yourself a challenge of taking 10 images. Take your phone, do whatever, photograph 10 images. If you can go for a walk locally, set yourself a challenge of it being within a mile radius, and you can go, okay, I'm going to photograph the color red today. And tomorrow I'm going to try and photograph the color blue. I'm going to get 10 images. And not only are you doing something creative, it's filling your time, it's substituting. You're getting, positive feelings from actually creating something. You're skipping the part where you would normally get cravings, because that's, if you're filling your time, with that, rather than just doing the same thing. But also creative processes still, I'm not, I can only speak from experience, but they still produce dopamine, and dopamine's the thing that a lot of people get with that, especially with that first drink. The first drink that a lot of people experience, this kind of dopamine rush, this kind of thing that comes down and washes over them. I get exactly the same experience when I get back and see my images and go, yeah, those 10, they're amazing. Pop them onto Instagram.
Exactly.
So if anyone wants to do that, and they can tag the booze break in their 10 images, and I'd happily share that information. Dennis, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. All of your information I will leave in the show notes for the listeners. So please go and check out Dennis and the Anxiety Guy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
Take care.
Have a good night.